Alright guys, this is part 6 of the early Muslim expansion. I'm glad you're here with me. Today we're going to see the Siege of Damascus. That's what the entire video will just be, the Siege of Damascus. This will basically mean that it is probably the most urban. I have no idea, but I feel like this would be the most populous city in this area. You have a ton of like amazing, like, when I say like historical cities, like just in view right here, you got Jerusalem, you got Acre, you got Damascus, you got Tyre, you got Beirut, you got just tons of these cities that are just holding Eastern Romans garrisoned in the city. And Heraclius, who is the emperor, has now moved up more north to Antioch. But Khalid and the Muslims have basically just ran through these people with much to no avail for the Romans. So let's see the Siege of Damascus. We'll start a little bit to the pretext here, but let's go.
In the direction of Damascus. On their way, they had to leave a mounted detachment at the city of Fal, ancient Pella, to keep the Roman garrison there tied down while the main army marched onward. After this was
they are like threading the needle through these cities
done, the Muslims reached Yakusa on the southern bank of the Yarmouk River. Here they were opposed by a blocking force of Byzantine troops on the northern shore. They were in no real position to offer serious permanent resistance, but they were there to delay the invaders and to allow the great city to further prepare for a coming siege. After a short battle here, and another battle against 12,000 Romans at the Yellow Meadow.
Oh yeah, by the way, just another 12,000 Romans. That is not something just to skip over. That's impressive. I mean, they have just been winning.
Otherwise known as Major Safar, the road was clear to Damascus. When the invading Arabs neared the city, the Muslim commander realized that his forces were not numerous enough to encircle it entirely. Instead, each of the Muslim sub-commanders stationed their contingents outside of the city's various gates, fully blockading the crucial thoroughfares by August 21st with a total of around 20,000 soldiers, 16,000 infantry, and 4,000 mobile guard cavalry. Damascus immediately began starving due to the lack of supplies and unpreparedness for a siege, while the Muslims were well supplied due to their domination of the fertile and productive local.
And that's got to be on the emperor right there. Heraclius had to have known this was happening. I mean, he probably doesn't even view the people of Damascus as highly as he would the people of Constantinople. You got to be prepared for something like this, especially how many wins the Muslim armies have been able to accomplish.
Countryside. As the swift Arab light horsemen were relatively useless in a siege, Khalid ibn al-Walid sent a few hundred of them to the Eagle's Pass to the north in order to act as scouts. Here they watched for any Byzantine relief force aiming to pass through this choke point. The other half stayed near the city as a reserve, ready to help repel any sortie made by the Romans.
I mean, Damascus is screwed at this point.
In Antioch, the Roman emperor learned of the siege and sent a 12,000-strong relief force, along with plentiful supplies, to help Damascus on September 9th.
They're gonna get pushed.
When this force reached the narrow pass where the Muslim scouts were stationed, they pushed the cavalry back. One of these scouts managed to send notice to al-Walid, and he, gambling that repelling the relief attempt was more important than maintaining too tight a blockade, took the remaining cavalry at night to the Eagle Pass, where he...
I don't know what to say besides they just handled 12,000 troops. If that's true, that's incredible.
Managed to rout the Romans.
Wow.
Despite their apparent success, the besieging Arab forces were now stretched thin by Khalid's withdrawal. Historians believe that if the garrison's general Thomas had chosen to launch a sortie at this point, the Byzantines could have broken the siege, but they did not and therefore lost the opportunity.
They just don't know how, they just don't have enough surveillance to be able to tell how successful that would have been.
It seems that al-Walid realized he had put the siege in danger with his gamble, and he hurriedly returned to Damascus after he attained victory at the Eagle's Pass. As the garrison and Thomas realized that no relief was coming, morale among the defenders of Damascus became weaker and weaker. It was clear action would be needed. So, the emperor's son-in-law decided to launch a counter-offensive of his own. For this first attack, Thomas decided to concentrate on one specific section of the city, drawing men together from all sectors of the city towards the Gate of Thomas, where he was faced by around 5,000 soldiers under Shurabil. After the defending soldiers gathered in the area, the Byzantine commander began his sortie by ordering his archers to rain down a constant stream of arrows against their enemy, to which the Arabs responded accordingly. Using the cover granted by the Roman missile units, the infantry rushed through the Gate of Thomas and fanned out into battle formation, with Thomas himself leading the assault. During the subsequent skirmish, it is reported that Thomas both broke through a section of the Muslim line and almost killed Shurabil, but he was then shot in the eye by the widow of a slain Arab soldier. Despite some
The widow of a slain Arab soldier. That seems like a tall tale. However, that's crazy.
level of success, the sortie had failed to break the siege, and the Byzantine forces retreated into the city. As they did, it is said that the injured Roman leader swore to take 1,000 eyes in return for his own.
Eye for an eye.
That night, another plan to break the siege was devised by the defenders. As a concentrated attack on one of the gates had failed, Thomas would this time launch simultaneous strikes from 4 of the gates. 2 large forces were gathered, at the eastern gate where Khalid was in command, and at the Gate of Thomas, where the main attack against exhausted enemy units would be undertaken. The other forces at the small gate and the Jabir gate were designed to pin their besiegers in place. As Thomas sounded the attack, a grinding battle took place at the Jabir gate, with both sides suffering many losses. After a while of this slaughter, Abu Ubaidah and his forces at this gate managed to doggedly repulse the Byzantine assault, driving them back into the city. The situation was far more serious at the eastern gate, where the Byzantines had a larger force. This larger contingent of defenders managed to break the Arab infantry and drive them back, but Khalid himself then arrived with 400 elite mobile guard cavalry, and with them struck the Roman flank.
Very interesting so far. Like they've been able to hold their own. The people defending Damascus right here. I don't know how much they can take though, because at the same time they're still starving throughout all of this.
This weakened the sortie irreversibly, and the defenders were slowly driven back inside the gates.
None of it's working.
Once again, however, the worst of the fighting occurred at the Gate of Thomas. Here, the Byzantine forces were led by the one-eyed Thomas himself, and after intense fighting, there was still no weakness in the Muslim ranks. At this point, the Roman commander seems to have realized there was no point in continuing the grinding melee, and commanded a slow, steady withdrawal. All the while, the Arab archers continually showered his men with arrows. This was the last effort by Thomas to break the Muslim siege, and it had failed with the loss of thousands of men. With this defeat, he could no longer afford any more attempts at a breakout.
Now what?
A Greek in Damascus, known as Jonah the Lover in Arab sources, climbed over the wall and informed Khalid that on the night of the 18th of September there would be a Christian religious ceremony which would leave the walls relatively unguarded. He supposedly...
Whoa, is he a snake? Is he like saying, hey, wait a second, is this guy trying to tackle his own people?
Betrayed his city because his marriage to his fiancée had been interrupted by the siege, and, frustrated, asked for the Muslims' help in obtaining said bride.
Jeez, man. That's crazy. That's why.
This man soon converted to Islam, but the details are incredibly vague. Whatever the case, details of the opportunity led Khalid to borrow ladders from a local monastery and to purchase ropes in order to form an assault party. That night, A 100-strong contingent, led by the Muslim general himself, climbed the walls, dropped into the city and killed the guards at the eastern gate. Then the attackers flung open the gate and let the remainder of the Muslim forces at the eastern gate inside the city.
Oh no.
The other Byzantine detachments stationed elsewhere were unaware of this surprising development, and instead of helping, stayed at their posts. At the same time, Khalid began to fight his way towards the center of the city. Now attempting to save the city for a final time, Thomas sent envoys to Abu Ubaidah at the western Jabiyah gate, offering surrender and a payment of the jizya in exchange for a capitulation by terms. This was given by the supposedly peace-loving Abu Ubaidah. However, Khalid, who had finished slaughtering his way to the center of the city, was furious that a surrender had been allowed even though the city had technically been taken by storm. Nevertheless, the many Muslim unit commanders agreed that a surrender would be honored.
Wow. That's insane. I wasn't expecting that.
Khalid reluctantly accepted this judgment. The fall of Damascus was a...
That's crazy. That's going to be it for this video, for part 6. Damascus, look, it was the strategic cities, like they've taken, like I said, the entire Euphrates, west of the Euphrates, and now they're starting to taking part of the Levant area, part of the Holy Land area. Damascus now, easily taken, I would say, by the Muslims. They had an envoy of 12,000 try to come save them. Didn't happen. It was not successful. And then they tried to break the siege several times with Thomas. Didn't happen. Several unsuccessful attempts. It's just a matter of time now between where they'll take the remaining Holy Lands and then Egypt and then everywhere else. We got a lot more to go. We're only about halfway through this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this. We got part 7 coming up. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.